Get us started, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your professional background?
Sure. So my name is Dustin Walsted. I'm currently vice president at Smart City Locating. I run pretty much all the finance and operations functions. So, I touch technology, finance, HR, legal, data, all of that. My background is actually rather interesting. So I failed undergrad accounting, and I'm head of finance. I went to college like everyone else did in my generation. That was how you were supposed to get ahead in life. And so I got my associate's degree because in high school I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So I was doing dual credit. And then during that course, I got involved with a group called Phi Theta Kappa. There's Leadership Honor Society for two-year colleges. So I did that, got my associates, and then did a transfer scholarship to TCU, Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas. And it was such an adjustment. There was so many things going on in my life. I, for the first time as an A student, got my first F. I had a 1.1 GPA my first semester. Totally tanked that entire first fall semester. Had some hard conversations with myself. Lost my entire scholarship. And then had to rebuild my way back up. So I then had a 2.0 my second semester, got the call that my scholarship was pulled. However, there's an opportunity to where if you could appeal your decision. And so I did that, ended up getting a grant to match my scholarship, went on from there, worked in various different organizations, and then was working for a large organization, BNSF Railway, Berkshire Hathaway owned. And got into finance at the CFO's office, was on the lead group of team that was doing FP&A, financial planning and analysis, and really got to see a lot of information really fast. And then I left the safe, large org world for a hypergrowth startup. And so I've been in a hypergrowth startup the last 3 years, and it has been a whirlwind. A startup year is like a dog year. It is 7, I would say even 10 years. These are not the same years that you grow up with. So that's a brief summary of how I got my current position and the rocky road it took to get here.
What drew you to finance in general? What is it that's exciting to you about that type of work?
Sure. I like finance. Actually, I'll pitch in this. I like strategic finance. So I am not an accountant. I understand how accounting works. I've got an MBA now. And so there's a way that you can do finance for, this is just how we record what the business did. And then there's a way I like to do it, which is I like to look at it and say, hey, if I can improve this one thing, 3%, 4%, 5%, I can have this impact on the business and the bottom line. So looking at strategic finance, looking at, risk modeling, looking at KPIs, all the things that say, okay, well, on paper, let me build this massive model and say, what could we do? And then I like to go back to my teams and help them with, okay, well, here's what we need the outcome to be. What can you do to improve that, to drive this result, to make this impact? And so that's actually what I really enjoy doing is getting in a massive spreadsheet and building out this model and going to the people who actually control the inputs and saying, hey, here's what's possible. Like, how can we make this a reality? That's what I mostly enjoy.
Sounds exciting. It does. So you had this experience at kind of this, more staid, mature company, and then now you're at this really fast growth company. Can you define what hypergrowth means to you? What does it mean to be growing, at that rate? And then can you do a little comparison and contrasting of the two experiences?
Sure. So hypergrowth to us, I think our like 3 or 4 year annual compound growth rate, or compound annual growth rate, is something like it's 3 digits. I think it was like 400%. I think our 7 year is something like 1900. So we would over double, every quarter sometimes. And so, when you look at every record, every quarter is a new record, and it's never flat. So it is always pushing the envelope, pushing the growth, and just seeing all this insane success for those around you. That is a stark difference than, hey, 3% this year, guys. Now, granted, 3% is great because that's growth in the right direction. But also, when you have a large engine that is a massive corporation, there's very minimal risks. It's spread so thin across the business. So growth in that looks a little different than a hypergrowth where it says, hey, we are building the plane as we're flying, but we are flying fast. and it's a journey. So it's very different. But I also think I've kind of, now that I've seen what hypergrowth startups look like, I think I've kind of gotten bit by the bug. A lot of fun.
What are some skills or attributes, maybe personal qualities that you feel you have that make you a strong fit for the type of work that you do?
You have to thrive in chaos. Bar none, people that we've talked to that, and even colleagues of mine, you've got people who just enjoy kind of going to work, kind of having an expectation of what they're going to see every day in, day out. Hey, I've got a pretty good idea of what even the next month, next quarter, what my workload's going to look like. In a hypergrowth, you don't know what's going to happen. I joke that every Friday is Fire Drill Friday because somehow something goes awry, something needs addressed, something just happens. And it's not always bad. Sometimes it's, hey, we got this massive contract we're expecting, and it's larger than all of our revenue combined so far. So you have this untapped potential of what could be, and so you have to be able to thrive in chaos, make adjustments as necessary, kind of take a beat and say, okay, let's refocus on what's the most important thing, not get too carried away, and just be very, very good at not being reactionary, but just being prepared. Because you can always be prepared, but you can never fully be ready.
I'm going to change gears for just a second and kind of ask you the flip side of a question that I'll ask in a second, because I think it's interesting to find I get a sense of what people don't like about the work that they do. So what is it that you dislike? What do you find hardest, most challenging? What do you not look forward to doing in your job?
So the same thing I said is great can also be a negative. There are days where I'm just like, I'd love to have a day that I can just come in here and have a pretty predictable day. And so sometimes you do have to understand that, you signed up for nothing being stable for a while in the hypergrowth. And that's, it takes a lot of energy. It takes more energy to do a startup than it does a stable job. And so you have to make sure that you find ways to recharge. And I actually, in that same vein, because I'm the own worst offender, I don't take vacations. I work to my wife's displeasure. I can't turn my email off, and so I'll often just throw my phone away and be like, I'm not looking at it for the next few hours. You have to find ways to recharge because they will burn you out so fast. So we've actually implemented a policy that is a PTO minimum. Where I set expectations that my team members across the company must take at least 2 weeks off per calendar year. I audit their PTO every quarter with their department heads and their managers. Anyone who is not pacing towards that will have a conversation that, hey, you are threatening and risking a burnout trajectory. You have got to take time off. And so we've done that because I would rather have somebody who works 100% 12 weeks a quarter than somebody who is burnt out the last 4. And so, that's my approach that, to combat the own problem of it is a challenging grind to do a startup that you have got to make sure you take that balance. And if you miss, your body will take it for you. Your energy will just be gone. And so you've got to really make sure that you take care of yourself. So you can always put your best foot forward.
I know that game. I've got a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old right now and a startup. So I'm deep in that game. So, so you're in a leadership role right now. I'm not exactly sure how big your organization is, but regardless, almost, what is it that you think how do you approach leadership? What are some of the things that you think about when you're leading a team and managing people to try to get them to perform at their best?
Absolutely. So we're about 60 full-time employees and about 400 agents, and so I think leadership comes down to self-awareness. My job isn't to be the best person at what we do. It's to build a team and know where my faults are, where my opportunities are. And so I've put people around me that are much smarter at what they do every single opportunity I have, because I need those people and I want to do whatever I can to unblock them and give them success. And so really leadership is about building a strong team. It's not about being a strong leader. Or that's actually how you are a strong leader. You build a strong team. You're not going to do it all by yourself. If you do, you're going to find out that you can't. And so I have put people in positions, and I constantly evaluate. Hey, is this the right fit for me as an ambassador of the company, and as a leader of that, but also for them. I never want to put somebody in a position that's going to set them up for failure, or something they don't enjoy doing. And so I've had a lot of conversations with people that like, hey, if this isn't, the right fit for you professionally, aspirationally, like I'm not going to hold that against you. And so being honest about, hey, this is, nobody's going to care about your organization as much as the top, level leadership does. So have that real expectation that it's okay. You shouldn't want that from everybody. And so we've been able to, kind of grow people who have their own growth paths that they've kind of carved out and made sure that the business have an opportunity for them to. And I've had multiple people who, have gone off and had massive success elsewhere. One of my favorite ones is, I had an employee who, when I joined, she was an individual contributor. She was, above entry level, but still, on the junior side. And, over the next 16 to 18 months, I gave her opportunities, challenges, exposure to new tools, new process, new methodologies. She left and she quadrupled her income. And so it was a combination of her vocalizing, I want to do X, Y, and Z, us saying, I have a need for that. Let's go ahead and give you that exposure now. And then something came up and she got what exactly she was wanting to do in an environment that she could thrive in. And I'm so happy for her. So, leadership is about not just you. It's about building a good team around you.
Yeah, absolutely. That certainly resonates for me. Final question for you here. So let's imagine that at some point, some young person is watching this interview and they're inspired by what you're saying, Dustin. They say, I want to follow in that path. And maybe even pretty specifically, I'm really excited about the idea of taking kind of this strategic financial approach and applying that to like really fast growth companies. What would your advice to that person be? How should they be setting themselves up or networking their way to find a seat in a similar role that you have right now?
Sure. So the first thing would be what you think you're going to do when you are in college is not what you will probably end up doing when you're in college, when you're in the real world. And it's the real world still, but, I was going to be in the NBA when I was 12 years old. And here I am. I never thought I'd be in finance, and here I am. So I would say, first of all, don't get too married to what you think your life will look like over the next X years. Absolutely have aspirations and work towards them, but also be open to opportunity. I did not mean to work for the company I work for. I used the service, loved the service, followed the founder on Instagram, and then loved what I was doing. I wasn't planning on ever leaving the railroad. I had a great career trajectory. I asked a lot of questions, and then on accident, I connected with the founder over an Instagram DM. We started talking. She said, "Can we meet for coffee?" And then she goes, "You ask questions that I need someone to keep asking. Can you come work with me?" So literally slid in her DMs and got a job, which is hilarious. And that's our favorite story. And so I would say the biggest thing to do is take a risk. So the answer is always no, unless you ask. And if you ask, it might be yes. So I said, hey, I would like to consult. I have questions. I just want to learn what you do. Very open-ended because I was going to consult for a little while. And so I said, look, I think I could add some value. Here's what I know how to do well. Let me see if I can apply it here. If you don't have this role, great. If you do, we'll keep moving on. So you have to ask questions. If you ask and approach with curiosity, you are rarely going to get turned down. Especially if you're genuinely saying, hey, I would just love to know more about what how this operates and how you function. And, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? One of my favorite things to do, because I do consult a little bit, not just because it's something different. I like solving other people's problems, but I like to learn about what their business does. How does it operate? Walk me through a spreadsheet of what you do, what your inputs and outputs, because that's on paper, but then walk me through why it excites you. So, if you want to get into anything strategic finance, I would learn about business, learn about people, because people are business. And so the more you can learn about the things that create the inputs and outputs on a spreadsheet, the better you will be able to coach and lead around, hey, here's why I think we can, this is an opportunity, or that's a cool, stretch goal to have, and all those kind of, corporate terms we can use. But you kind of ask questions.
Wow, what a great note to end on, Dustin. I really appreciate it. And certainly that resonates. I think the idea that, the question is in many cases more interesting than an answer. The question kind of sparks the opportunity to think about things. So